Let's get right into it. Number 8. The third arm surgery. Imagine waking up one morning with an extra arm stitched to your chest. No, this isn't a Marvel origin story. It was an actual medical experiment in the 1960s. Surgeons in the Soviet Union and the United States tried grafting extra limbs onto animals, and yes, sometimes onto humans. Because apparently, let's see what happens if we sew another arm on, was considered good science. The most infamous example was surgeon Vladimir Demikov, who became legendary for his bizarre transplants. He sewed dogs together, literally creating two-headed canines, to test how blood circulation worked between two bodies. The dogs actually survived for a few days, which is equally horrifying and fascinating. And while it sounds like the kind of story you'd tell at a campfire to ruin everyone's sleep, the truth is that these gruesome experiments helped lay the foundation for organ transplant science. Without the nightmare fuel of extra limbs, modern heart and lung transplants might not exist. From a psychological perspective, there's something deeply disturbing about extra body parts. Your brain is obsessed with symmetry. When you see something as wrong as a chest arm twitching, it triggers the uncanny valley effect, the same thing that makes creepy dolls terrifying. Except in this case, it wasn't a doll, it was alive. So yeah, the next time you hear about a successful kidney transplant, remember, it all started with surgeons casually saying, "Let's give this guy another arm." Number 7. Radioactive glow therapy. Picture this. You go to the doctor with back pain, and instead of painkillers, they hand you a bottle of glowing green water. Congratulations, you've just become a 1920s patient, and your prescription is literally radiation. Back then, radium was marketed as a miracle cure. Doctors prescribed it for arthritis, fatigue, and even low energy. Companies sold radium-laced toothpaste, chocolates, and energy tonics. People were basically chugging uranium cocktails like it was Gatorade. Spoiler alert, it did not end well. The most infamous case was Eben Byers, a wealthy industrialist who drank radium water every day for years. At first, he claimed he felt fantastic. Later, his bones started disintegrating, his jaw fell off, and newspapers described him as literally glowing in the dark. When he died, his body was so radioactive that it had to be buried in a lead-lined coffin. Psychologically, this is a case study in blind trust. People believed doctors wouldn't sell them poison, so they happily glowed themselves to death. It's the same brain glitch that makes you think, if it's in a pharmacy, it must be safe. Your childhood cough syrup was sugar and dye. Their cough syrup was nuclear waste in a bottle. So yeah, radium therapy. Basically, the original side effects may include everything. Number 6. The sleep deprivation studies. You know how cranky you get after one bad night of sleep? Now imagine a team of scientists standing over you with clipboards, saying, "Great, don't sleep for a week." For science, welcome to the nightmare realm of sleep deprivation experiments. In the 1950s and 60s, researchers pushed human volunteers, and sometimes soldiers, to their breaking points, just to see what would happen if the brain was denied rest. The results? Hallucinations, paranoia, uncontrollable laughter, memory loss, and in some cases, complete psychological collapse. One subject reportedly believed he was being stalked by shadowy figures inside the lab, except they weren't there. His brain had just decided, if we can't dream, we'll hallucinate while awake. From a neurological standpoint, the brain treats sleep like software updates. Skip too many updates and the operating system starts crashing. Your body releases stress hormones, your neurons misfire, and eventually, your brain invents entire scenarios out of thin air. It's like your head's version of Windows blue screening. And here's the kicker. Sleep deprivation wasn't just academic. Militaries were extremely interested in how long soldiers could stay awake before becoming useless. Spoiler, not very long. By day 4, you're basically a babbling NPC with caffeine jitters. So, next time you pull an all-nighter and feel like you're losing your grip on reality, congratulations. You've participated in a diet version of a government experiment. Number 5. The malaria prison tests. Here's a cheerful piece of history. During World War II, American prisons were used as live labs for malaria research. At Stateville Penitentiary in Illinois, hundreds of inmates were deliberately infected with malaria so scientists could test treatments. Doctors let mosquitoes feed directly on prisoners' arms to spread the infection. Then they cycled the inmates through different drug cocktails, some of which caused brutal side effects, nausea, seizures, even temporary blindness. And all of this was justified with one simple line. It's for the war effort. Here's where it gets morally messy. The inmates technically volunteered, often in exchange for shorter sentences or better conditions. But let's be honest, when your choices are rot in prison or be a science experiment, that's not exactly free will. From a public health perspective, these experiments did help refine malaria treatments that saved soldiers overseas. But ethically, they turned prisoners into test dummies without much concern for long-term damage. Psychologists point to this as a prime example of coercion bias, when people agree to things not because they want to, but because the alternatives are worse. So yeah, next time you swat a mosquito and complain, remember, some poor prisoner in the 1940s had to get bitten on purpose so medicine could advance. Number 4. The elephant tranquilizer test. File this under science gone spectacularly wrong. In 1962, researchers in Oklahoma decided to test the effects of LSD on an elephant named Tusco. Their brilliant idea? Inject him with 297 milligrams of LSD, about 3,000 times the typical human dose. Because, elephants are big. What could go wrong? Spoiler: everything. Within minutes, Tusco collapsed, had violent seizures, and tragically died. The scientists, clearly shocked, later admitted they had no idea how LSD would affect such a massive animal. Their logic was basically, let's wing it and hope for psychedelic circus tricks. From a psychological perspective, this experiment shows what happens when curiosity overrides empathy. The researchers weren't asking, should we? They were asking, how many milligrams will make an elephant trip? The answer was, enough to kill him. The fallout was brutal. Animal rights advocates called it barbaric, and modern researchers point to it as a prime example of bad experimental design. No control group, no prior testing, just pure chaos injected into a 14,000-pound animal. And here's the kicker: the study taught scientists almost nothing useful about LSD, except maybe that overdosing an elephant is a terrible idea. Basically, this was less groundbreaking research and more frat boys with a grant. Number 3, the human radiation experiments. Imagine going to the hospital for a routine checkup, only to find out decades later that you'd been secretly used in a radiation study. Sounds like a conspiracy theory, right? Nope. Welcome to America in the 1940s and 50s. During the Cold War, the U.S. government ran dozens of covert medical experiments where patients were injected with plutonium or uranium without their knowledge. In other cases, entire hospital wards were exposed to high doses of radiation, just so scientists could study the effects. Spoiler: the effects were cancer, organ failure, and lifelong health issues. Psychologically, the betrayal here is massive. People trusted doctors to heal them, not to turn them into walking Geiger counters. This kind of deception created a legacy of medical distrust, especially among communities that were targeted disproportionately, like the poor and vulnerable. One infamous case was a man named Albert Stevens, who went to the doctor for a stomach ulcer. Instead of treatment, he was secretly injected with plutonium. He lived for 20 years, but his body became so radioactive that when he finally died, his remains were handled like nuclear waste. So yeah, the next time you joke about the government putting chips in vaccines, remember, they already tested plutonium in actual people. No conspiracy required. Number 2, the tear gas school experiment. Picture this: you're sitting in class, bored out of your mind, doodling on your math homework, when suddenly, boom, the military shows up to gas the entire room. No, not detention, an actual experiment. In the 1960s, during the height of Cold War paranoia, researchers in the US and UK tested chemical agents like tear gas and other irritants on unsuspecting civilians, including schoolchildren. Sometimes, the tests were announced as safety drills. Other times, people just didn't know. Imagine being told it was a fire drill, only to end up coughing your lungs out because scientists wanted to see how kids realistically reacted to chemical exposure. The psychology here is wild. The military wanted to simulate panic behavior, so kids became unknowing lab rats for crowd control science. And sure, the results showed that children panic differently than adults. Spoiler: lots more screaming. But ethically, this was nightmare fuel disguised as safety training. Think about it. Those kids probably went home that day, told their parents, "School sprayed us with weird smoke," and nobody believed them. Which is the perfect recipe for a future generation of conspiracy theorists. So if you've ever wondered why boomers don't trust institutions, maybe it's because some of them were literally gassed in gym class. Number 1, the Stanford prison experiment. And finally, the crown jewel of disturbing medical-adjacent psychology, the infamous Stanford prison experiment. In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo recruited college students for what was supposed to be a 2-week study on prison dynamics. Half were guards, half were prisoners, and the experiment took place in a fake prison built in the basement of Stanford's psychology department. Sounds harmless, right? Yeah, about that. Within days, the guards became cruel, humiliating the prisoners with psychological abuse. The prisoners broke down emotionally, crying, raging, even begging to leave. Zimbardo himself got sucked into the role of prison superintendent, ignoring the chaos until an outsider demanded he stop it. The whole thing was shut down after just 6 days. Psychologically, it revealed how disturbingly fast ordinary people will adopt abusive behaviors when given authority. But here's the dark truth: the experiment was deeply flawed. Zimbardo encouraged guards to be harsh, meaning the whole thing was more like theater than pure science. Still, the haunting footage, students breaking down while others barked orders, cemented it as one of history's most chilling studies. It wasn't just an experiment, it was proof that, under the right conditions, almost anyone can become the villain. And that's way scarier than any monster under the bed.